Welcome to I Got a Question Conversations with Dr. S. So, welcome to I Got a Question Conversations with Dr. S. Today, I have the pleasure, so excited, of asking questions of the one and the only Dr. Marlena Clark, or as she's affectionately known, Dr. MC. Dr. MC, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. All right, so let's get into it. I'd love it if you would introduce yourself to the people.
Absolutely. So I am, again, affectionately known as Dr. MC or Dr. Marlena Clark. And I am a woman of many gifts and talents. And the ones that I use most, I'll go and start with those, are the gift of counseling, teaching, and healing in general. So I have a company that allows me to help others rise above dysfunction, particularly the cultural dysfunction that we have, because, we're in the world, we're a part of it, but we're set apart. We're supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. So I help to highlight the dysfunction that we're experiencing and walk us through biblical tools to heal and rise above that dysfunction. So that company is Above Productions. I also have a nonprofit where I offer my counseling expertise. I'm a licensed counselor, and I've been doing that for 14 years, and it allows me to sit in spaces with people who have navigated trauma, who are navigating grief, who have navigated childhood issues, relationship issues, spiritual issues, all of those things.
Mhm.
And the nonprofit gives me the unique opportunity to provide support to those who are underserved, underinsured, and part of underserved populations. So that's Mia's house. And, like I said, I have a couple of different things that I do. I sing, I teach, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I feel like I do all the things
All
now,
the things.
and just being able to have the freedom of saying, God, you gave me all of these gifts. So this teach me and lead me as I use them so that I'm being a good steward over them. So that's me.
I love it. I love it. I love that you do all of the things and don't feel like you have to limit your gifts to just one area or one thing. That is so beautiful. So, as we talk about that, as we hone into the multiple roles that you just shared, let's take a moment to focus on becoming a counselor. So, I know as a fellow therapist, I believe that the majority of us end up in this field because either something happened to us in our early years and we're trying to like figure out and gain an understanding of the why, or we were involved with a social worker or a counselor for some reason, and that person or people made a lasting impression on us. So, how did you become interested in counseling?
Yeah. It's that question is reminding me of some of the gifts that I didn't necessarily mention. One of which is the prophetic gift that God has blessed me with. And I think I feel like I was in middle school, but definitely in high school. I was always the kid that would like gravitate towards the kids who were bullied, who
Mhm.
were like, picked on, who weren't part of the cool kids group. And even before I really knew like what therapy was, what a counselor did, what the field of psychology was all about, I
Mhm.
had a heart to just like let them know you got a friend in me. Like, I'll sit with you. Like, you can talk to me. I'm not going to
Mhm.
make fun of you because God just shaped my heart in such a way that I don't like seeing people hurting. I
Mhm.
want to figure out how I can help them heal, how I can support them, and take that pain away, so to speak. And so that's really the root of where this whole counseling piece started. And obviously it grew um, ironically, it grew from a place of need and a slight desperation when I was in undergrad and realized that I made a promise to my mother that I was going to graduate. Our graduation ceremony at Hampton was Mother's Day. And
Mhm.
so I said, well, after my 4 years is up, I'm not going to share too many details about my age. I'll let y'all guess. Like once I get to the point of graduation, that Mother's Day, I promise you, you will be y'all be back here and you'll see me walk across that stage. And I was a music performance major. And for anybody that's in music, knows about music, studied music, you know that the one class that usually gives people a hard time is music theory. And that class gave me an exceptionally hard time to the point where I had to change majors if I was going to keep my promise to my mom. And I had a piano teacher that was studying psychology, and she encouraged me to. She said, "Why don't you try psychology?" And I was like, "Okay." And I looked at the course, overview and outline. I said, "Actually, I could switch to that major and graduate on time still. Wonderful. Let me do it." And, there are other many things that happened that really encouraged and pushed me to the populations that I like,
Mhm.
I'm an expert, quote unquote, or
Mhm.
that I specialize in serving. But those two factors, just that heart to help people when they're hurting and wanting to keep my promise to my mom, directed me to the path to become the counselor that I am.
Wow. So this is totally off my thoughts, but as you say that, just for anyone who is listening to this at some point, I love that you were able to pivot. I think that's one area, it's a skill, honestly, that so many
Hmm.
of us don't have. Like we get so set in um a thought about how something is supposed to be, how something is supposed to happen, how something is supposed to look. And when we have to divert from that, it causes turmoil and even trauma, which we can get into at some point. So I love that you were like, okay, I absolutely adore music and I've heard you sing. I know that you are wonderful at it, but you was
Thank
like,
you.
so here's the thing. I like this other stuff too. And I'm good
Yep.
at this other stuff too. So let me shift. So I appreciate that you shared that for those of us who um have been in that position where, I thought my path was going to lead me this way. But now I see that God, at the end of the day, that's who it was. God is like,
Hmm.
no, let me go this way. And you were willing to make the shift.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. So you were the nice kid in school who, were like, come sit with me, or I'll sit with you, or, telling the bully to stop. I love it. Being that kind person and seeing that's just a part of your character. That's just an innate gift or skill that the Lord has given you. And then counseling just kind of built upon that. So as we're thinking about things that have happened in our personal lives or lives of those who are around us, I know trauma is a big thing now, this concept of trauma. And I'm a firm believer that in some way, shape, or form, every person has experienced some type of trauma, whether or not they recognize it as trauma.
Yep.
What helped you or made you aware of this concept of womb trauma?
Mm. So, unfortunately, when I was in undergrad, I had a couple experiences, and the second, technically the third experience,
Mhm.
let me know, oh my gosh, like I've been assaulted multiple times. So my senior year, I was at a party, and there was all kind of, hindsight. It gives you a different level of perspective. I was a kid who was sheltered growing up,
Mhm.
couldn't wait to get away from my parents. And I was going to do all the things they told me I couldn't do when I
Mhm.
was good and grown enough to do them. And so all through undergrad, I explored that. I
Mhm.
pushed the limits. I did all the things that I was taught in my household in church. No, you don't do that. I did all of it
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
some. And so part of that was partying, going to parties and just having a good time. And at a party that I went to, I remember feeling the presence of the enemy,
Mm.
seeing the presence of the enemy and ignoring it and
Mm.
saying, "Oh, well, as long as I stick with my friend who I had come with, and as long as I'm paying attention to my surroundings, I should be good." And again, unfortunately, during that time, a group of men set me up to assault me
Mhm.
sexually.
Mhm.
And that spiraled and triggered a series of memories that started to come back up in me in the years to come as I was going through my healing process. And the first things it let me know is that this experience is not unfamiliar to you.
Mhm.
I literally blacked out during the experience. And so when I was trying to make the police reports and do things, I don't remember seeing faces. I heard some voices. I didn't
Mhm.
recognize them. It was a dark room. So I was helpless in that way.
Mhm.
But it also reminded me that, hey, I'm studying psychology. I know
Mhm.
your body does certain things to protect you, especially if it's experienced a thing like that, a traumatic thing like that. And so I started reflecting on other experiences I had in undergrad with men. And I was like, yeah, no, I didn't welcome these sexual encounters.
Mhm.
And it was an interesting dilemma for me because I wasn't married. I knew that I was fornicating, and I allowed the enemy to use that in my own guilt and
Mhm.
being, a child of God to say, like, well, you probably deserved it
Mhm.
because you shouldn't have been at that party, you shouldn't have been fornicating, et cetera, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. But again, it started to unlock for me the fact that no, you've experienced not just these assaults in undergrad,
Mhm.
but this happened to you when you were a kid. And it was so far locked in your unconscious memory
Mhm.
that only your body recognized it.
Wow.
And that's what really uncovered no, womb trauma is a real thing, and you've
Mhm.
had it for all of your life, essentially. And then I started noticing all the symptoms that came with, yeah, you experienced and were exposed to it in childhood. And it just gives a host of symptoms that adds to the trauma, that you experience.
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I appreciate your vulnerability because I feel like, again, everyone in some way, shape, or form has experienced trauma. And I think for women and for men, sexual
Mhm.
trauma is one of those things that unfortunately a lot of us have dealt with. And one of the reasons why I appreciate you sharing your story, and I've heard it, and I just love that you're like, I'm not gonna let the enemy use this experience to keep me quiet or to shame me. I'm going to use it to not only heal myself, but to help heal others. And I think it's important, and if you wouldn't mind, because you are expert in this area, to talk a little bit about what sexual trauma looks like. And I ask that because of this. I think sometimes just we as people hear a term and we associate it with only one thing. So if someone hears sexual
Mhm.
trauma, they assume rape,
Yep,
but they might not think about molestation. They might not think about child sexual abuse. They might not think about the little boy in the hallway who touched her butt. So can you talk a little bit about what sexual trauma is or can look like?
absolutely. Um, and I'm so glad you asked that question because as I was sharing my story and recounting it for myself, it reminded me that even myself, studying, being a victim at the time of it, didn't recognize certain things as sexual trauma.
Mhm.
So it can range from physical, a physical assault on your reproductive organs, or forceful acts, forceful sexual acts that are committed against you in childhood, in adulthood, and it can be at the hands of any gender. It can be at the hands of any age. Um, any unwanted sexual contact in adulthood is considered sexual, assault. In childhood, can be a bit more nuanced because it's not always counted as the physical contact.
Mm-hmm.
It can be being exposed to pornography. It can be being exposed to essentially voyeurism and being forced to watch other people have sex. It can be at the hands of a cousin who is in your age group, or a peer at school. And it can be a harassing nature, where they're, writing sexually explicit things to you, or saying sexually explicit things to you that make you uncomfortable. All of that can be categorized as sexual assault. So again, any kind of physical um, touch, attack, unwanted, forceful physical attacks, sexual attacks, any exposure to sexual content through images, through whether books, or actually physically watching or viewing it on social media, or the internet, and or any kind of harassment. So verbal, written, all of that can be categorized as sexual assault.
Thank you. Thank you for breaking that down for us. And I will be sure whenever I post this episode to include a trigger warning, because I know
Mm,
if somebody, just pops on like, oh, Dr. Answer, Dr. MC, and they were like, whoa,
right.
we talking about some heavy stuff. So I will be sure to include that, because again, I will say it repeatedly and from the mountaintops. All of us have experienced some type of trauma, and many of us have experienced some type of sexual trauma, and we just have not put two and two together. But as you started off with, our bodies recognize that even if our cognition and our mind doesn't always make the connection, our physical body does. And so
Mhm.
with that, can you talk a little bit about why womb healing is so important?
Yeah, it's um it's something that has been so instrumental in my ability to be free in Christ.
Mm, it's
The
okay.
pervasiveness of sexual trauma and womb wounds. I don't think I recognized it until I had experienced several types of womb trauma. It started with the molestation, and then it moved to being raped, and then it moved to having fibroids and all of the things that came with that, and then it moved to experiencing pregnancy loss. Um, and I again, I can't pinpoint one particular type of womb trauma that had me realize I gotta heal.
Mm,
I gotta heal from all of this, and there needs to be a separate type of healing that is devoted and dedicated to this kind of trauma. But I know that once I really started the journey of, okay, God, I'm ready to be a mom. Um, and the process that you go through to prepare
mhm,
for being pregnant and being a parent and all of the things that go into it, it forced me to recognize, hey, you could be triggered because
mhm,
it you hold this in your body,
mhm.
and you carry a new life in your body. And so if you don't start the work of healing, you're going to pass that down to your baby,
Wow.
and it's going to come out in your parenting. because it's coming out in your marriage. It's
Mm-hmm.
coming out in how you interact with your friends. It's coming out in therapy. It's coming out everywhere. One of the many gems that I've gotten from being in therapy for the last, it's probably been a solid decade, maybe a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, I'm a therapist and I have a therapist.
Amen.
Highly
Me
recommend it.
too.
But one of the gems that I got from one of my OG therapists was denial leaks.
Mm,
And every time she would say that, I would just cringe, like, oh, you're right, it does. And again, what it taught me is that if I'm denying that some of this pain that I'm experiencing in my womb is related to the traumas that I've endured over
mm,
my lifetime, then I'm just going to pass down either the effects of it, because the signs, they come out in a lot of different ways, or I'm physically going to be impaired in such a way that I can't show up the way I need to show up. And so, again, that kicked off for me this idea of no, there needs to be some serious dedication and time devoted to womb healing. And I made the efforts to set up a program. I made the efforts. I did it for me first.
mm-hmm.
Like I partnered with God and said, look, I need to heal whatever you want to reveal to me and bring back to my memories to help with this healing. Whatever you want to continue to hide it. Whatever I gotta do, I'm willing. I'm willing to do it so that I can heal from these wounds that have at one point they they almost ended my life,
Mm,
if I'm completely
mm-hmm.
honest.
Wow. Wow. I feel like Oprah, like just wow, like just listening to your story, because I'm sure as people listen to this podcast, there will be many people where this resonates with them, their early childhood, their collegiate experience, and then dealing with this in marriage, even in your singleness as a parent or trying to be a life, just as they're living life, how this stuff is coming up. And I want to talk a little bit more about the program you mentioned. Before we do that though, can you talk a little bit about how um when things happen to us, when we have these external experiences, how they show up
Mm,
internally?
yeah. Oh my gosh. They show up as chaos and confusion and everything from below.
Mm-hmm.
One of the I guess our tagline for above is we rise above the things below.
Mm,
And the reason that that's our tagline is because the enemy is going to counterfeit and going to kill, steal, and destroy everything that God has for us. And again, womb trauma can show up in so many different ways. But what's and some of that, the reasoning behind it is just because of how our bodies process trauma.
mm-hmm.
When our brains are alerted to the fact that there's danger, and that's what trauma is. It's the presence of something that causes us to fear for our lives, and or to sustain some kind of injury.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happens, our brain sends signals to our body to protect yourself. And that's where we get the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses
Mm-hmm.
from, where, oh, I'm gotta fight my way out of this thing, or I gotta freeze to preserve my life and hide and stay safe, or et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't recognize, not recognize, if that response isn't released,
Mm-hmm.
because those responses have been, again, to keep us from immediate danger. And once that danger is removed, if it doesn't come back down to a place of calm, a place of peace, um, then we're going to continue to have those reactions internally. And externally, they show up as things like, for me, angry outbursts.
Mm-hmm.
0 to 100 isn't sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 0 to 1,000.
Right.
It was ugly and scary. And it was my mechanism to keep people away. I got to protect myself. Ain't nobody ever gonna harm me like this again. Depression. I was chronically depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I don't think anyone had the language to understand. No, this is not teenage angst.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just hormones. This is like legitimate depression. Like, she's really sad. It showed up, and it shows up more than just in your emotions. For me, physically, it showed up as pelvic floor dysfunction, something I've just started learning more about
Mm.
recently,
Okay.
in that I tightened up my midsection. Like, I thought holding my stomach in was just like, one, it was to keep my stomach flat so I look cute when I'm posting my picture. But two, it was just a natural thing that I did. Tightening my jaw. Oh no, that's just something I do.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's literally connected to your pelvic floor, and it's your body holding on to anxiety
Okay.
and tension.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then spiritually, it showed up in the form of, God, I don't trust you. You let this happen to me in childhood when I was innocent and helpless. How can I trust you now as an adult? This
Right.
stuff keeps getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
It showed up in rebellion. It showed up in fear, and not like a reverent fear of the Lord, like a, I'm afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
You probably gonna take me out because of all this rebellion,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't trust you. And also, and I think the most detrimental part was me not feeling that God really loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um again, trauma can show up in our bodies in a lot of different ways, and it's a basic fundamental survival thing. Like, God has imprinted our bodies with these mechanisms and these systems to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm.
And when we keep getting exposed and we don't have means of healing and release and surrender, it stays in our bodies and it disrupts our normal patterns, so that we walk around ill.
Yeah. Yeah. That mind body connection is something that we just are not aware of. That I feel like these are the types of things that we need to have our kids taken in school, like to
My God.
understand how your body reacts to stress, and so we can be more aware. I know, certain classes in schools talk about like yoga and mindfulness, but it's deeper than that. Like it is so much more. um it can go so much more deeper than that. So thank you for sharing that. So I want you to talk about your resources, but before you do, I would love, because we're focusing on womb trauma, womb healing, but I'm curious, is this something that men should be mindful of? Like, do they need to
Mhm.
be mindful of womb trauma? And if so, what about that? Do they need to know? Like, just yeah, help the people.
Listen, I'm really gonna cut up and cry now. It it is imperative that men are aware of not only what womb trauma is, but the impact that it has. Um, I can't count the number of conversations I've had with my husband, that I had with him before we were married, because part of my woundedness was being defensive and protecting myself. So I told men that I was dating about my wound trauma early.
Mm-hmm.
Like, either you gonna run, and I want you to run if you can't handle
Mm-hmm.
it, or you're gonna rock with me and you're gonna help me through this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've had countless conversations with my husband about the impact of my own wound trauma. And because, I mean, some of it's because he's married to a therapist. So you learn different levels of empathy and,
Mm-hmm.
and listening and all of that. But a lot of it is because he also has a heart to care for others, to serve others, and to take away pain
Mm-hmm.
that people are experiencing, or find ways to help ease the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So he has always had a listening ear for anything that pops up with my womb trauma. and has shown compassion, has done his own research, like just been an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important for men, for fathers, for uncles, for brothers, for husbands, for boyfriends, for pastors,
Come on.
like anybody that holds a role in a woman's life,
Mm-hmm.
somebody with a womb, to understand what it is and to have enough resources that they can be a healthy and a safe support
Mm-hmm.
system for those women, because it helps to tear down the barriers and the openings. It
Mm-hmm.
helps to stop the openings that the kingdom of darkness has access to keep ruining our communities, to keep destroying women through womb trauma, and to
Mm-hmm.
keep breaking up and separating the family in detrimental ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also important for men to be aware and to be conscious and to care about womb trauma, because we need our men to be not only just advocates for us, but to hold the people who are causing the womb trauma
Yeah. Yeah.
accountable.
Yeah.
Trauma, sexual trauma happens to all genders,
Mm-hmm.
but it's disproportionately affecting women
Mm-hmm.
and girls. And so that means that we need the people who have the power and the privilege, men, to step up and say, we're not going to allow this. We're not going to allow the loopholes and things that allow sex trafficking. We're
Mm-hmm.
not going to allow the locker room banter that
Mm-hmm.
makes it acceptable to
Yeah.
harass a beautiful woman or a girl or etc. etc.
Right.
It again, it is imperative for men to show up. And I have the reason I said I'm gonna really cry now is because not only did my husband step up for me, but my father has stepped up for me
Mm-hmm.
in ways that it's helped to repair my relationship with my heavenly father,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that I have a safe space to, like, he's always my daddy. I have my husband as covering, but he's
Mm-hmm.
always gonna be my daddy. And to know that I can, even if I'm not talking to him about the pain of memories that come up when I'm dealing with pregnancy loss, that I can say, Dad, I need a hug. And he'll
Mm-hmm.
give me a hug and he'll remind me, I'm praying for you and it's gonna be all right.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff, it heals years and years of pain and trauma.
Mm-hmm. That is so powerful. Um, I love what you said because we live in the world that we live in, and we recognize that men tend to have the power and the privilege. And so if they acknowledge the fact, one, that they have that power and privilege, and two, that they can use it to help keep us safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's your daughter, your wife, your niece, or just the woman you see on the street,
Yep.
help keep her safe. Help set a world and an atmosphere where she doesn't have to experience any kind of trauma. And in particular, since we're talking about womb trauma. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had known we were gonna cry, I would have had the tissues ready.
You think I have some tissues ready? Because I know I get to carrying on like that.
No, it's okay. And that just goes to show, your lived experience as well as your passion for the topic. So because I know you're passionate, I want to be sure to give you the opportunity to talk about the resources and the different programs and stuff that you have as we get ready to wrap up.
Absolutely. And thank you for creating a space for this, because it's important to have these spaces. Again, knowing that there aren't many for womb healing. So I have a program called the Grow Program, and Grow stands for Gaining Redemption Over Womb Wounds.
Oh, okay.
It is a really dynamic program that allows a space for women who have been exposed to any type of womb trauma. And I listed out a few of the different types, from sexual assault to dealing with fibroids or cysts, endometriosis, to dealing with pregnancy loss and fertility struggles. There's again a host of things that can cause womb trauma. And so what the program offers is an opportunity to have community with
Mhm.
other women who are going through their own healing process, and to also go through a course that walks you through the different stages of uncovering the root of the womb trauma,
Mhm.
uncovering the symptoms and the cycles and patterns that you created because of the pain of the womb trauma, and when we handle it from a place of dysfunction, or we use cultural norms
Mhm.
to manage as opposed to those biblical principles and norms that we have at our disposal. And then it takes you through a journey of getting a breakthrough from those things emotionally, psychologically, physically, and spiritually. And then we wrap up the program with a celebration of how God has kept us and will continue to keep us and allow us to enjoy our healing inheritance. One of the things that I realize is the enemy wants us to get stuck in our womb trauma because it messes with our seed, and
Mhm.
not just our physical seed, the
Mhm.
children that we can bear, but also those gifts. It messes up our ability to sow seeds
Mhm.
based on our gifting, and to realize our purpose. And when we do that, or we succumb to that, we are forfeiting our healing inheritance. We're
Mhm.
saying, yeah, we're adopted into the family. We're joint heirs with Jesus Christ, but we're not going to accept our inheritance because of these wounds.
Mhm.
And so it was important for me to wrap up the program, and we talk about it throughout, but to wrap it up with an understanding of, this is your healing inheritance and you should enjoy it here on earth.
Mhm.
Like, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth
Mhm.
as it is in heaven. Like, we're supposed to live that out.
Right.
So again, the program is a beautiful, safe, loving place for women who have been exposed to any kind of womb trauma and who are ready to accept their healing inheritance and live in the freedom of Christ.
Man, I will be sure when I do the description for this podcast to include your handles, your website, anything else that you would like me to share with the people so they'll be able to get in touch with you and
Yeah,
begin
thank
their
you.
journey towards healing. So I am just so grateful first just to know you because you're awesome. And
Likewise.
then I just really appreciate all of your knowledge that you shared with us today. I really, really do appreciate that. Are there any final words or comments you would like to make?
Just how much I love you too. I think it's really cool that, we made an internet connection on social media a couple of years ago, and like, we are sisters and friends now. I think it's beautiful. And again, I appreciate what you do with your platform, and how you use your gifts to serve others. It's a beautiful thing, and it's so needed right now.
Thank you so much. To God be the glory. So
Amen.
this is awesome. I think I can officially say that all of my questions have been answered. And so I want to thank our internet community and virtual family for hanging out with us for I Got a Question Conversations with Dr. S. If you haven't already, be sure to follow on Spotify and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So we'll see you next time with more questions. Be blessed, Dr. S. Thank you for joining us for another episode of I Got a Question Conversations with Dr. S. Be blessed, Dr. S.